Hello, everyone. This is a new show that I'm going to be starting. At least this is a experimental episode that I'm doing. It's going to be called Weekly Digest, where we are just decoding the fashions and the cultural events that are happening weekly. And this is a biggie because, at least the first week of September, so many things has happened over the past few days, and I was already planning to just dwindle down to the top 5 stories, but there were at least more than 10 and 20 plus events and stuff. It's very important to covering something like who are the new announcements in terms of ambassadorships, at least the events they're covering regarding beauty and fashion. I have my notes here, at least covering what's the latest updates and at least having just a bigger discussion of what has been happening and such. And definitely it is not an ordinary week. And just to highlight, just this week alone, we have the US Open finally came to a conclusion. You have Anna Wintour finally announced the new successor for American Vogue and their new strategy. Rhode Beauty by Hailey Bieber has launched in Sephora, so you could finally purchase your Rhode products in store. We had the VMAs and also just the absence of New York Fashion Week. So we're going to be covering at least these few main things. And the other biggie was, I forgot to mention, which is very important. And definitely it's a very sad news in the fashion world, is the passing of Giorgio Armani. I'm going to discuss at least the legacy and such. So the first thing we're going to be covering is the announcement of Anna Wintour's successor. Her name is Chloe Malle. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Chloe Malle. Yeah. And she's a very interesting figure because she had worked previously in terms of the digital content and through the podcast called The Run Through. And she has already worked with the American Vogue. She's a Nepo baby, apparently, with her parents being Candice Bergen and Louis Mel. And I'm not very familiar with her parents, but I think just from the looks of it, actress in a lot of famous movies like Miss Congeniality. This is very telling. At least this is going to the reigns of someone younger. The newest successor is only 39 years old. But there's a lot of questions online on Threads, Instagram, and social media when this was announced that will this be a new take for American Vogue? Because there's a lot of criticism over the years with how Anna decided the direction of the Vogue covers, especially in comparison to their international Vogue sisters, especially in terms of the art direction, their experimentation, bringing new voices to the covers. Whereas the common criticism is it's very boring, it's very bland, and it's nothing as exciting, and it's mostly featured the usual American celebrities. And the hope with the new editor herself bringing a new direction, a new fresh perspective on this, and hopefully to be more experimentation. But just there's an announcement at least a few days ago, and today is Monday the 8th, that the new directions that instead of monthly is going to be more curated or more quarterly based. And if I'm wrong, I'll just put in the subtext here. And to be more focused on the curation and not just focus on producing monthly editorials, which there's a lot of criticism for it because that just defeats the accessibility of the fashion industry to the public, especially for students or people who aspire to be in the fashion industry or getting to know what's in of the industry. Especially that just recently they said even when you subscribe to Vogue on their website, the runway photos has changed to a separate paywall. And that is in of itself a criticism of where the direction of the publication is going. And this is very interesting conversation to take on because what most people, I think everyone has to consider is that at the end of the day, it's not just through the readers they are earning their profits. It's also obliging to the ads that are being published in Vogue. Because for me, like personally, when I first went to New York, this was back in like the early 2010s, I was very excited just to purchase my first September issue. And when I first purchased, I was like, oh wow, this is like so thick. This is going to be like a Bible. It's going to have so much information, like everything that I need to know. But once I opened up, I noticed I was extremely disappointed because everything in that magazine was just ads. Ads for every major luxury brands that you can imagine. It's like the Burberrys, the Miu Mius, the Chanels, the Hermes, and so forth. And it came to my mind just realizing that the reason why it's just, I would say it's like 30% also is the writing content, and majority are just ads. Because ads itself are placement in the editorials incentivize readers to buy something from the luxury brand. And that in of itself, it's a very fine, delicate balance for the publication and editorial moving forward. So that is something that Chloe, the new editor, has to keep in mind moving forward. And especially I think they're aiming to be more focused on the digital content instead of focusing on physical media. Especially that more and more these days, we are becoming more reliant on the digital space and less reliant on physical media. So that's why it's more like a curated, limited edition focus. And it'll be interesting to see what her first issue from Vogue is going to be like. And that is definitely what we'll be covering in the near future. And the second biggest news is the death of Giorgio Armani. I believe he lived up to 94 years old, which is a really long time. Armani, the brand itself and the designer, has a very unique approach, especially in terms of Italian luxury fashion house. Because when I think of Italian fashion brands, my automatic thoughts are brands like Gucci and Versace. And those brands are usually like maximalism, very elaborate, more is more approach, logos everywhere, very colorful, very loud, very proud. And it's something that you cannot escape from, especially if you just see someone wearing something like the signature of the Gucci monogram, the Versace gold rims, and so forth. It's unmistakably Italian maximalism. Whereas Giorgio Armani's approach is very different. Giorgio Armani is much more minimal. It's very black and white, and it's a very masculine cut, especially for women's wear. But it's very interesting though, because it just shows the versatility of the Italian fashion houses. Just doing some research about it, he is one of those last remaining fashion houses that are not under a conglomerate like LVMH. So they're not under one parent company. It's still a luxury house that is still fairly independent. So unfortunately, like with the death of Giorgio Armani, the legacy is hopefully still going to continue for many years onwards, but it's very unfortunate the founder himself has passed away. It's definitely a very important time to recognize his impact on the fashion space, especially dressing up many celebrities on the red carpets. His very minimalist but still very impactful design, his signature in his brands. So the next story, which is a big announcement, which is Rhode Beauty has finally launched into Sephora. I believe this was like 2 months ago in June, July, when Rhode has finally going to Sephora. This is a very big deal because initially when Rhode started out, I remember that at that time, Hailey Bieber wasn't the most liked person on the internet, especially her personal story of the rivalry between her and Selena over her husband, Justin Bieber, also because Selena launched her brand Rare Beauty initially into Sephora, whereas Rhode still primarily online. You can't buy her products anywhere except through her shop. After the acquisition and her success of Rhode Beauty, being one of the very popular clean girl makeup brands among Gen Z, to basically start a very strong cult-like following. Any campaigns that she did for her limited products, the lip liners, the lip peptides, the pocket blushes, everyone went crazy for it. You cannot scroll through the internet about beauty without looking at Rhode Beauty. And it's funny that over time, initially it was Rare Beauty, and now Rhode Beauty is the focus of the conversation. Not to say one is better than the other, because everyone still has their preferences. Rare Beauty is still very popular around the world. However, now with Rhode Beauty finally entering into Sephora, and I believe it's only available in the US, Canada, and the UK, it's solely the expansion of her products around the world, making it more accessible to everyone. And especially that it was a very big deal that her brand has been acquired by e.l.f. Beauty, which is a very interesting partnership between Rhode and e.l.f. Because normally with beauty conglomerates, it's like the Estee Lauders, the L'Oreals, was it Coty Beauty? It's the one that where Kylie was initially under. Normally you have those traditional beauty conglomerates who wants to expand their portfolio. But with e.l.f. purchasing Rhode Beauty for $1 billion, it's definitely like a very unique partnership and something that I could see being successful moving forward, and especially like being launched into Sephora just for a few days, and now majority of Sephora stores are out of stock. She has been seen around in New York to do the big marketing opening events at Sephora in New York, and at the same time went into the New York Stock Exchange to celebrate e.l.f.'s IPO. So that's a very big deal, and it's a big congratulations to like this road success. And I think it was also announced by Sephora themselves that it was definitely the biggest launch that they have for many years. So it's very exciting to see like Kaylee's journey initially like being very hated and very despised to where she is today. Especially that she and Selena launched during the time there's a lot of oversaturation of celebrity beauty brands and skincare brands. And it shows that definitely stands a test of time. I'll definitely say like her marketing campaigns focusing on sensories, using like food and very experimented ideas of using like donuts, focusing on like foods to demonstrate the scent, like the taste and textures, is definitely was a big success for the Rhode team, because I think probably that's why it took a while for them to get into Sephora or any retailer, because this is definitely an opportunity for her and her team to have no limitations of an investor or anyone just saying, no, you can't experiment this because hasn't been a proven concept. But because she didn't have a higher up to stop the team from doing what they want to do, it has proven a big success for them. So just to show that even if you may not make it at the first round, it's an opportunity to learn and make a name for yourself. So that's a very big deal. And the next story I'm going to be talking about is the infamous aloe bag that is for like $3,000. And this is not like a big news, but this is a very interesting conversation I want to have. Because when you think about aloe, you initially think of their Instagram worthy fitness wear that is on par and the same price as Lululemon. However, many stories out there shows that aloe is not the most, how to say, what you pay for. It does not match up to the price that you pay for, because the quality is mostly polyester. I believe it's see-through. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I never really purchased aloe clothes before. But there's a lot of complaints about the quality of the clothes being very marked high up, but they're known to be fashionable. A lot of influencers wear it. They're yoga, Pilates studios, and they pay big money in terms of the marketing campaigns. So people have already, sometime this year, have negative feelings towards aloe. Now, with this announcement of this $3,000 Italian leather bag, and the strategy is that they're more focusing on leveling up to the next status, being leather bags. And for me, that was extremely questionable when they announced it, because I personally, for me, I don't associate leather handbags to alloy, especially leather handbags are often associated with big bag companies. Like you think of the Hermes, the Coaches, or fashion houses. I personally don't associate alloy to fashion houses, but more like associating with them to Adidas, Nike, Lululemon, like those types of brands. So that is very left field for me personally. If they have come up with a nylon bag similar to Lululemon, something I could imagine them doing, because it's more based on practicality, on the move. You still look good and fashionable, but you could use it while you're working out. But the problem with the leather handbag is it's very heavy, especially if it's genuine leather. Plus, I can't imagine people bringing a leather bag to a workout class. And just like the shape itself is so structured, I can't imagine people using the bag as a gym bag, which I don't think they were planning to do anyways. And they just wanted to compete against the fashion houses in this market. But there's a lot of criticism for it, especially the price tag of $3,000, which is on average definitely on the higher end pricing for luxury fashion houses. I myself have a small Coach leather bag, which is not as big as the one Aloe, but for me, that was only around $200. And it's just a practical over-the-shoulder strap bag. For me personally, I wouldn't want to pay over $200 for a leather bag, especially if it's crafted. But it looks very stiff and it doesn't seem to have a lot of pockets. And correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but it's a very big conversation to have. Are we paying it just based on the idea of brand association? Or are we willing to criticize and have critical thinking of not buy whatever that's in front of us, especially if you're loyal to a brand? Because I think you could tell already, I'm personally a big Lululemon wearer because, like, for me personally, like, I just like the quality. It just makes me look good. And also, it's just something that I wear every day. I play tennis like 3 times a week. Yeah. Big news is that Becca Bloom finally have her wedding at Lake Como. First of all, it's a big congratulations to Becca Bloom getting married. And it was a very big deal, especially she is like the famous TikTok influencer showing off her rich lifestyle. And there was definitely a lot of discourse about her showing off her wealth online. But the big critique that came along was the whole idea of her wedding was being sponsored by Lancome. And people were quite disappointed of how her wedding turned out to be because it looked very boring. It's in Lake Como. And people think that it just wasn't as exciting or as elaborate as they thought it would be. Personally, I don't think she needs to be so elaborate as people want it to be. But I think people just don't want to be so expected, especially from the audience's point of view. But you can't really blame her for having to live that traditional rich lifestyle, that they want to make it much more classical leaning, which may seem boring. But the problem also, I think, is like when Lancome stepped in to be as like the makeup sponsor for the wedding. And it's a bit of a mismatch in this case because I remember when Sophia Richie got married with her husband, people were like in awe of her wedding, like being in like south of France, I believe. And her makeup was with like nude sticks and like that type of brand, whereas Becca Bloom is Lancome. The problem with Lancome in Becca Bloom's case is that it's leaning towards a much older demographic. And I believe Becca Bloom is still like in her late 20s. Lancome is more leaning towards someone of a much older demographic, whereas Sophia Richie using nude sticks is leaning much younger. So I think that's where the disappointment come in. So there's like a mismatch of the influencer brand collaboration in this place, but it's just to show that even if the brand may pay a lot of money, but it needs to have the same audiences with each other. Because I remember I saw Kendall, was it Kendall or Emma Watson? It's like one of those celebrities who was also the face for the brand. And I remember this was like a few years ago, like 5 years ago. And I remember seeing them in the duty free catalog. And I initially thought that it doesn't seem to fit well for each other. And it hit me is because the brand associated with Lancome, which I have no doubt the products are good, but it's just the association of the age group and the model just don't seem to match. So I think that's something that we have to consider when we are seeing these types of sponsorship. Does the brand and the influencer or celebrity are a good mix together? So that's that. And again, this is a lot of story and this is already like quite long. So we have the big weekend. It was the US Opens with the week happening at the finals and the VMAs happening at the same time. And on top of that, there was no mention of New York Fashion Week, which is insane. So I'll try to sum it up all in one word. What was certain, which it was a big conversation with Michael Kors in a podcast interview, is that he criticized of how American fashion houses should be showcasing in New York Fashion Week because it's a very big deal to be showcasing your work at New York Fashion Week. Especially, it's like the biggest fashion stage in the US. But it's been leaning more and more over the years that everyone's just going to the Paris Fashion Weeks instead because it seems more prestigious. It has more historical context in it. And it's not to say that you have much less cameras in your Fashion Week compared to Paris, but it's just the prestige, the historical context of Paris as the couture founding. That's where a lot more fashion designers are leaning towards the European fashion weeks. So it's very understandable where that critique is coming from because I remember it used to be a big thing back in the day, at least the big American designers would show at New York Fashion Week, but not as much these days, which is unfortunate. You don't really hear a lot of celebrities going to these shows now, which continues to dwindle down the whole aspect of your Fashion Week. But at the same time, which is definitely like a big ordeal, US Open is the New York Fashion Week because US Open, like one of the big grand slams in tennis, they are definitely more and more celebrities coming to these events. It definitely started last year with Zendaya going to a lot of these grand slams to, in a way, it's not only to watch the tournaments, but also to promote her movie challenges. So bringing that more association into the movie. And just like that, there's definitely a lot more like big sports legends coming to the tennis tournaments like Steph Curry and other celebrities like coming in. And there's a lot of big influencers that are also coming in because they were sponsored to go and attend. And there was definitely some criticism about that. And it was a big deal when the president of the United States also pitched up to see the men's finals. And the tennis tournaments themselves become like a fashion show. Because what makes tennis tournaments different from any regular sporting event, like in basketball, baseball, or football, is that tennis tournaments require some sort of dress code. It all stems from tradition. And tennis is one of those sports that you cannot be loud and rowdy when you're watching the tennis match happening. It's only in between the sets or in between the points that you could cheer and so forth. It's definitely highlighted how the fashion is definitely playing a major role for us. And at least the influencers are bringing the younger crowds to these tournaments these days, which is a very good strategy. So on top of that, it's very interesting the differences of Wimbledon fashion versus the US Open fashion, especially Wimbledon just being the last Grand Slam before the US Open. Wimbledon's definitely very strict with their traditions, meaning the place has to wear all white, the audiences have to dress smart casual, whereas the US Open is definitely much more casual. The tennis players can wear much more experimental, they could wear more color, and you could definitely see the differences of the vibes in the crowds with all of fashion that is going on. So that is very exciting in of itself. Last but not least is the VMAs. The VMAs I didn't realize was happening on Sunday, but it was definitely a lot of like big news of K-pop slowly like getting recognized with Cat's Eye and Rosie getting awarded. But VMA fashion, especially for red carpets, is very unique is that this is a chance for celebrities, especially up and coming celebrities, getting more experimental with their fashion. So it's not as like strict as like the Oscars. They could be more out there, be more casual, and try to do something that's very eye catching, because the more things that people talk about you, the more attention you're going to get. So it may lead to more sales. But just based on the looks, nothing really captured my attention. But I do notice that not every female celebrity has to wear a dress. Everyone could just wear like crop tops, like dress pants, everything and such. Especially the VMAs is from MTV themselves. It's definitely leaned more to a much younger crowd, like teenagers and college students. Also just noticing that it personally, I don't find it as much as it was exciting back in like the early 2000s, because I think everyone is just wants something that is like a bit more exciting, and also it's the same old formula over and over again. So I don't know what a potential switch up can be, but I think it's also that if there was a much more like clear idea of in terms of dress codes, it'd be something that's much more exciting within the sphere of VMAs. But that is all I have for this week. Initially, I wanted to make like at least some points about it, but I do enjoy speaking out like this. But definitely, I would be more prepared next time. But this is just my experimental weekly show just to get things going. But I'm very happy and how things are going. And I hope you really enjoy the show. And I'll definitely be more organized next time. But this is the first practice, and I think it's doing decently well. So thank you for watching all the way till this end. And I hope you have a great rest of the week. And I'll definitely will speak to you again on Monday. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.